All right, MA Marignon, turn 55. Always some trepidation when starting a war. I do wonder that maybe those scouts have just been hanging out and this is going to be a surprise for Falegra. Or possibly not. Hopefully it is. We received a messenger from Vanheim, and it looks like this is actually directed at us and not the room at large. Yeah, I think this is fair. We don't actually have a ton of air gems, and we actually summon our angels with astral pearls. But that's even better. Perhaps they have some astral pearls they'd like to trade. So yeah, we'll definitely reach out to Vanheim. Obviously, we are pretty worried about Asphodel. I don't think that Vanheim is going to be able to slow down Asphodel too much. But that's just because Asphodel is massive and the player is excellent. But it's still, I think, worth making that trade. We finished research in thaumaturgy. Let's see, 6 moving to 7. And yeah, I'm actually not 100% sure what this is for anymore. I feel like, Enslave and Charm will be useful against Falegra, although we don't have a ton of nature. So yeah, we'll see how much we can actually deploy that. If we get some more Lamia Queens, that research will be a lot more useful. But we are kind of low on nature gems. And that is at least partly because we've been, bringing in a lot of patrollers, our wolves, who cause nature gems. Our site searching did not go well. We did start our blood hunting. We don't really actually have any patrollers yet in this province, so it's not going to be great blood hunting, but it should be able to expand in the not too distant future. We do still have a few assassins left, so through one guy at a mage, assassinating mages with just a human is always dangerous. Yeah, and this is the air guy, and we just have the Vinemen, so I have a feeling that there's gonna be some lightning bolts in our future. Yeah. So we'll see, though. Mist form is definitely really useful, but he doesn't actually have any protection. Yeah, and his morale's broken. And we got lucky that the lightning, didn't hit our assassin. Just goes to show the Pokemon items, the more, units you can bring to assassination is really critical. And so even though I like to play around with other assassin kits, there's a reason that the classics are the classics. So let's take a look at our raids, or, really like the opener to our attack. I'm trying to be better about this, where I'm not revealing my hand immediately in terms of marching forward. You don't want to send your Doomstack as part of the first wave, because it gives away information, and why risk it? And also gem burn and stuff like that. Body ethereal, so in theory we'll be safe against all these arrows, but that doesn't always work out for dudes in robes. We're also set to advance and cast spells with no bodyguards. That I regret perhaps a little. Really, Phoenix Pyre Buddy? He's just on his own, his own decision making here. It does work out, though, it looks like, for us, as long as we don't catch some arrow. So yeah, this is kind of just some basic fire elemental rating. I don't think this guy has a jar either. Let's look. No, he doesn't. But he is super aggressive. He does not need to be getting this close. Yeah, really? I don't want to get close and flame eruption them. He could have done Falling Fires, that has a greater range. Yeah, there's the route. Oh man, I think we're gonna lose this too because of this crippled guy. Oh, what a bummer. So yeah, we're probably not gonna take that. So yeah, advance and cast spells, right? We are defeated. Is a bit tricky. If you don't advance, sometimes you can get in the situation where your guy just sits back and tries to spam fireball at really long range and just keeps missing and fatigues himself out and eventually catches an arrow and dies. So yeah, it's a bit of a toss-up. Honestly, some gear for these guys, just a shield or something, might make the difference. So whether or not that's worth it, I'm not sure, but that one doesn't work out for us. Not a super auspicious start, but also completely could have worked. All right, here we have some bodyguards, just some flagellants who are not going to love arrow fire. Okay, this is a more dangerous province defense type. Yeah, and I think this is one of those provinces, right? There's a scout here, so right? I don't know. I kept seeing scouts on my borders. Why would there just be a scout hanging out? Surely he's got to be recruiting them every turn, which means scouts are pouring into my territory. Probably should do something about that. But that may not have been the case. It's kind of looking like it wasn't the case. Maybe just recruited some scouts and forgot about them. There's a lot of moving parts in a Dominions game, so it's entirely possible, easy even, to lose track of a few commanders. And that might be what happened here. It might be what triggered this war. I still think it's going to be a good war for us. Like, Phlegra was already like somebody that's like, okay, like maybe we should be fighting them. And there's definitely some gains to be made here. But like, it is always kind of funny, like all the misunderstandings and like the random things. Like he probably, doesn't even know about these scouts, like never gave him a second thought. So that one does work out for us. Or on the other hand, maybe this was just this turn's round of recruitment that we caught. So there's really no way to know, but that raid works out for us at least. So, we know that this can work. And then, man is making quick work of Abyssia here. Well, let me rephrase. Man is moving quickly against Abyssia. Whether or not he will be making quick work depends somewhat on how much fire resistance man has brought. Also, though, there's the Bronze Colossus here, who is fully kitted out. He's set up for fire resistance, which makes sense because friendly fire is absolutely a thing with fire magic. He's been given a weapon that's going to help his defense skill, which is kind of interesting. I feel like that's not the norm for like a Bronze Colossus, but he has gotten it up to a pretty respectable level. The protection, of course, is really what these guys are about, and that's at a pretty ridiculous point. Like 36 is quite high, so if man also didn't bring something it's going to be able to either ignore that protection or something that's really, really strong, and I'm going to be able to cut through it. Probably the only good thing is I don't think you can get regeneration on these guys. They might be able to get life drain, but this guy does not have the paths for it, and he doesn't have the gear for it. So any damage that you do in the battle, will stay. But still, this guy's going to be really tough to deal with. There's also a ton of mages here. A lot of fire mages, also a lot of lizards, right? We know about that lizard shaman province that was on our border. So we'll probably be seeing some nature magic and some astral magic, and then just some chaff out in front. And then these fire drakes are super dangerous. I think these guys are very fire resistant. And so that's some good chaff to be using, because these fire drakes, they will just burn everything in front of them. But Abyssia is pretty badly outnumbered here. That said, a lot of this is just garbage, right? Like the longbows they'll clean up the chaff pretty effectively, but a lot of this is going to die to fire. The wardens possibly have a chance. Let's see. Okay, this guy, nice. He's got 2 smashers. That's a weapon that's useful against inanimate beings, which is what the Bronze Colossus is, and he's got boots of quickness. So I feel like that's pretty solid gear. Fatigue could definitely become a problem for him, especially since he didn't have any same kind of kit. No fire resistance. Maybe it's on the Bless. Hopefully it's on the Bless. There's a ton of mages back here, so man's probably going to be doing like Fog Warriors, and we're going to be seeing some lightning. And he's got some water magic. Ooh, okay, I don't know what. Maybe that was poison. Okay, yeah. So I was going to say some of that was poison resistance, but no, that's just corpse constructs always have poison resistance because they're undead. Wooden Warriors, right, increases your protection, gives you susceptibility to fire. That's something that man can pretty easily cast and is normally really good. Here comes Rain. That's pretty standard against Abyssia. Relief, Howl, all coming from man. But still, the fire weakness could be a problem, although, he's got so much stuff. Here come the fire elementals. And fire elementals are pretty dangerous, but still, the chaff gets almost completely wiped out. A lot of them taking, a lot of lightning strikes. And so it looks like battlefield-wide spells. Okay, Quagmire came up also from man, so they do have a lot of undead units that aren't going to worry about fatigue, and things are more fatiguing for Abyssia and the Rain. So combined with Quagmire, I could see that. Of course, it looks like Abyssia is leaning on the other aspect of their nation, right? Yes, they brought out a lot of fire stuff, but they're also bringing in horrors because Abyssia does have blood and astral. And so, we see a variety of horrors coming in. They'll attack anybody, but it looks like, there's definitely some horrors back here too. So, that's going to be dangerous for everybody. This is definitely a bit more of a desperation play, or sometimes if you can just bring a few really tough commanders or something, right, and then bring in a bunch of horrors and your guys can deal with it, and the enemy army can't, then that can be beneficial. In this case, I think it's just, Abyssia's got what they got, and they're just throwing everything out. You can see a lot of man's own units getting killed by the Thunderstrikes, right, especially with Storm up. The accuracy on Thunderstrike is not great, so trying to get these fire elementals, when you have more units, it's pretty tough. Now, some of those horrors are dead, but Gore Tides are really tough to kill. It's got damage reduction, right? 50% regeneration, 50% on 62 hit points, and it's ethereal, and, you know, plague carrier and a bunch of other nasty tags. No resistance to shock, though, actually. So, you know, if it does take a couple lightning strikes or, you know, thunder strikes, it could die, but, you know, because it regenerates so quickly, like, you really need to hit it, you know, like 2 or maybe even 3 times in a row. That's a tall order, right? You know, you can see, like, the thunder strikes have gone all over the place, and even with relief up, right, a lot fewer thunder strikes coming out now, probably because most of these mages are asleep, and it is a very fatiguing spell. Even for decently high-level casters. On Abyssea's side, most everybody's dead. We do see one of these guys with the smashers, I think. Yeah, he almost got to the back, but unfortunately he bumped into a Gortide, and now his morale has failed. His morale actually is not fantastic. So yeah, maybe a morale item for this guy. Didn't actually check the bless. Right, we've definitely seen this bless before. It does have some fire resistance on it, so that makes sense. 10 is enough, especially with rain and everything else. Like, I could see why it's like, well, you don't really need to have like fire resistance items, though it still would be nice when you're going up against Abyssea, but you know, whether or not it's worth the gems. Fire is also not a path that man gets a ton of. Probably should have put on team colored squares for us. Better late than never. But yeah, you can see there's one horror that's left back here. The Gortide, of course, is not dead. And I think there's a good chance that this battle time's out. It looks like the Bronze Colossus has just been set to cast spells, right? So he's just going to hang out in the back. And like a couple fire elementals have just gotten completely distracted by the wolves. Hal doing some pretty good work here, I would say, for man. But like, yeah, I'm not sure. It doesn't really look like there's any more horrors coming in. So man still might be able to come away with this because they have a long time yet for the battle to go. Hopefully they have at least a few of their casters set to advance and cast spells. I think this is a situation where, you know, you probably don't want your most valuable casters on advance and cast spells generally, but like, you know, some of your lesser mages, you know, to help avoid situations like this, right? Like if you had, you know, a couple casters that could cast lightning bolt and that were set to advance, they might get close enough. You know, if you had like 4 or 5 of them, they might be able to get off a volley of lightning bolts that would actually kill this guy. I think, you know, this Gortide right here might actually, you know, cause the loss here for man. And now that said, like, you know, the Bronze Colossus is going to be tough. And I think man brought some good answers for the Bronze Colossus, but, you know, just trying to get thugs to connect in melee with the necessary target in these large army fights is really challenging. I think it really just comes down to numbers. You know, you just need to bring a lot of stuff. And it looks like he has a sleeper up here who looks like he's the gem carrier. That's unfortunate. He's gone berserk. And there's a good chance that was just like off-script stuff because the nature mages can berserk people. Like, yeah, I think Gift of Madness. Yeah, you can see Gift of Madness in there. I don't know why they like doing that. I mean, it can be advantageous at times, but then at other points, they berserk your gem carrier, who is also your commander, and like who you really don't want to be going into melee. And I'm not really sure there's a whole lot you can do about it when you have a lot of nature magic. Maybe just try to keep your nature mages away from, you know, your really valuable guys that you don't want in melee. But like, yeah, it's just a bit of a problem. Oh no, man, this is just so rough. Oh, my heart goes out to man. You know, like, yeah, I don't think there is. You can use stealthy units, right, to carry your gems, but that is extra logistical hassle, and like there's problems that can happen there. These sleepers are pretty tough chassis, all things considered, you know, especially for like a human nation. But like, yeah, anytime that you have your gem carriers in the battle, like, that's dangerous. And so we can see that one of the sleepers is dead. There's a decent chance that this one doesn't die, although, like, yeah, Shockwave is probably what's going to do him in. And then, like, yeah, probably is there, yeah, the Gortide, he's chilling. So there's too much trash around him. Gortides are decently killy, so, like, he will keep opening stuff up. But I just don't think, like, most of man's thugs will probably set to attack rear. I don't really see any. And then, like, yeah, the mages with the lightning is pretty much the only hope for that situation. The sleeper, at least, is still alive. Let's go ahead and speed this up, because this is going to take a while. We might not finish this out, although I do kind of want to see if this sleeper survives, because that's so many gems. That's going to be so rough. And, like, yeah, this is part of the reason, right? I knew that, like, this player is just really good that's playing Abyssea that's subbed in, right? So I just knew that it's like, okay, Abyssea's, yeah, there he goes. Abyssea's not that big, right? Like, they're an obvious target. But Like, I knew this was going to be a tough nut to crack. And while I do think that Man is still going to come away with this, right? Like, he has so much stuff here, and Abyssea hasn't actually, like, killed all that much. Although, like, you know, what he has killed has been pretty painful, right? This is going to be a very painful victory. Well, I guess technically it's going to be a loss for Man, probably. Yeah, there's another Gore Tide. So, like, that kind of makes it, yeah, that's even worse, right? Because now the army's going to get scattered. It's going to slow him down. His neighbors are going to be interested, right? Like, this could have been us, you know? And it's not like Man didn't bring stuff, right? Like, he brought multiple thugs to deal with the Bronze Colossus, but, you know, didn't really consider, or, you know, maybe just thought that they could also deal with the horrors, right? Either didn't think about the horrors, or, you know, felt that he had enough answers. Lightning is usually a pretty good answer to stuff. And I'm kind of surprised that we're not seeing more lightning. I mean, definitely the mages back here are still casting. He's got relief up, right? So while they are pretty fatigued, you can see from the blue bars there, like, they're still able to get casting. They're just choosing, again, to enrage guys, you know, touch of madness, or, like, there's a lot of healing going on, which, like, sure, you know, that's not a terrible idea, but it's like, yeah, there's the lightning. Like, you really, really need that lightning damage. So yeah, I have this problem a lot as well. Like, I think this is a really cool army that Man built, and while he did put some, you know, anti-super combatant stuff into it, it just didn't have enough for the size of the army. Which, like, absolutely, this could be us. This could be foreshadowing, right? Because we have a similar situation. Yeah, there's the route due to the timer. Although it's possible that the Bronze Colossus dies, because I think that it never retreats, and if the turn timer goes, then yeah. So let's take a look. Yeah, so the Bronze Colossus does die, right? And that's just because, you know, the battle took too long, it timed out, and mindless units never retreat, and so if they take too long, or rather, if the battle takes too long, then they're killed. I'll double check on that. I can't imagine anything killed them. Otherwise, like, yeah, Abyssea actually didn't commit that many mages. I mean, okay, a good amount of mages. Yeah, actually, no, he committed a lot of mages. Most of them survived, though. I wonder if some of these guys were set to retreat. Because this is suspicious. These are the blood guys, right? These are the blood and astral guys. So I wonder if they just called horrors and then bailed. Which means that, you know, Abyssea would be able to basically wind up and do this again. And, like, this is kind of a suspicious, I mean, this is a lot of mages, absolutely, right? And, you know, these guys were committed to the fight, and you can see they took some casualties, but I'd be willing to bet that Abyssea could do this again. There's also really, like, not much chaff here, right? We know that Abyssea actually has, like, relatively large groups of infantry, which are completely absent here. So I think we pretty much just witnessed a horror trap, and they're nasty. So, you know, this is significant losses for Abyssea, the Bronze Colossus being, like, the most important loss, but, like, otherwise, like, yeah, I mean, they're still ready to fight, whereas, like, on Man's side, it's not catastrophic. I mean, it looks bad, right? 553 units, and you lose 374 of them, and then, of course, like, everything is scattered in the retreat. So, I mean, from an attack standpoint, it's kind of catastrophic. Like, this attack is over. He's going to have to, like, regather this army. But, like, mage-wise, like, he brought a ton. Maybe too many of these wise men, I feel like 21 of them. Then again, 92 kills. I don't know. They're just not great mages. Like, yeah, I'm not sure what he was using them for. But, you know, most of all the mages survive, right? He only actually takes 4 mage losses? 5 mage losses? No, 4 mage losses. This is Lord Warden, who are those thugs designed, you know, to kill the Bronze Colossus. But since the Bronze Colossus died anyway, this isn't such a bad loss, and one of them does survive. But anyway, regardless, like, the mage core is still intact, and a lot of what was lost, right, like corpse constructs, like, that's fine. He can make more of those. These warriors, that, you know, you can recruit more. It is a bit painful gold-wise because they are kind of expensive in gold, so that's maybe not a loss. Neither of these losses he can probably replace super quickly, but yeah, 4 turns from now, like, absolutely, you can have this amount or more. The Knights of Avalon is possibly the nastiest loss. These guys are not sacred, but they are cap only and extremely expensive. They kind of are like Man's sacreds in a lot of ways. They're not, because somewhere in here, yeah, the Wardens of Avalon also cap only, not as expensive, but they are the sacred and they're cap only. Loses a good chunk of them. That is actually a ton of Vine Ogres to be losing. Vine Ogres aren't, like, great, and they're not super expensive, but 80 of them is a lot. That's a lot of nature gems. The Landless Knights also not cheap, right, as infantry goes. not incredibly expensive either. So, I mean, this is a big gold loss, right? But man is relatively large, and I don't think they're getting pressed too hard elsewhere. So, having not lost too many mages, like, it looks really bad and it is really painful, but I do think man will recover and will absolutely win that war against Abyssia, barring Abyssia doing a bunch of crazy stuff, which I would not put past them. So, we might, like I said, we might jump into that war and help man out. Or compete with man, right? This is our knight group, and so there's some bodyguards on here as well. Excellent. The archers are shooting at the knights, and we should be able to take out these deer tribe, no problem. I do like the knight raiding groups, but I have realized that it's incredibly expensive, right? Even these 6 guys, right? That's 300 gold of knights, plus the witch hunter needs another 185 gold. When you include the bodyguards, right? This is basically a lab, right? That we're looking at. This is a lab moving around and raiding, so it's a fairly significant commitment. So I'm still trying to work out. It's well, how much do I just raid, with only the witch hunters versus knight groups? I do think as the game goes later, and the knights, especially with the MR problems that we're going to have, we're just going to be forced to break them out into smaller groups. This is looking interesting. Let's see. Okay, not defended, but still, this is Yis's army. We haven't actually really seen one of these in action. We have seen the Bless. Looks like some of these ladies have been berserk. Yeah, I don't know about this. This is a cursed item, so it's entirely possible that these ladies just pick this up. Still, 2 of them, that's pretty unlucky. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, the amulet does have some benefits, right? I mean, strength +4, the dark vision on top is actually going to be nice. And then 10% regeneration. Regeneration is never bad, but they just don't have a lot of hit points. So hopefully this was, accidentally picked up. The other thing too is that berserking tends to reduce your defense. Although I guess it's berserk 0, so it doesn't actually reduce their defense. So yeah, maybe, I guess, but I don't know. Like I said, they could have just been picked up. But yeah, it doesn't really look like there's a whole lot to this army. Pretty much just sacreds and infantry. I don't really even see any mage support other than, possibly the thugs, who again, most of those are berserked, so they're not going to be doing any spell casting, which is another reason it's just super rough. Probably just picked up. I wonder if somebody was just making them to donate to their opponents, because having 2 of them is just kind of random. But things happen, and their sacreds, Yis's sacreds are notorious, so this is still a very scary army, and it'll be interesting to see, if Pelagia can do anything about that. It's going to be difficult for us to actually catch those battles, but now that we've actually found an army, although we may have found this army before, we'll hopefully be able to predict its movements. And keep track of it, and actually watch some fights. Right, so this is the fort that's pretty close to us. Yeah, and there's been a pretty massive investment in PD. Some of these might be patrollers as well, right? And so we knew that this was probably going to be a more heavily guarded province, right? Which is why we committed more stuff. Still probably not enough stuff. We'll see. The arrows are really the issue. Yeah, and the wrap. So we get wrapped. This is not enough commitment. We really needed some more chaff generation, and I don't know. I felt 3 fire elementals should be enough. But clearly it was not, right? So, that's fine. Okay, so there were actually quite a few patrollers, so at least we didn't accomplish nothing, but still, this is a pretty poor trade to be taking, and unfortunately now, one of our armies essentially will be the leading edge, of our attack, since we didn't really commit enough to the raid. That's possibly a situation where 5 bodyguards per mage might have done better. That might have been enough. Maybe some better bodyguards. And then, yeah, here's Asphodel's thug, along with his friends. And I don't think this is going to go well for Phaecia, as this just looks like a collection of light infantry, and a few of their sacreds. Maybe there's a storm captain in here. But yeah, even if there was, that would be a fairly tall order. And I think this guy is just going to do his thing. He is our current arena champion as well, I think. And they gave him some bugs for a little bit of cover. Of course, the bugs are pretty slow. So yeah, they don't always do such a great job. But the flying bugs, they're always present in combat. But the crawling ones, yeah, they often lag behind. And then, yeah, here's some more of our rating. This has not gone great. This is, yeah, on top of the throne, which, yeah, it's interesting. There's actually less patrolling going on the throne than, that random palisade. So I'm not really sure what that's about. Both of them are border provinces. So this is a situation I felt yeah, probably this won't work. I kind of intentionally committed less, but I don't know. Looking at these raids, I don't love this. Because we committed, losing a witch hunter still sucks. And it's just yeah, pretty unlikely to ever work out, so this, I need to rethink this. But again, I think the idea is sound. Obviously this doesn't work out. Okay, so there was some patrolling. We do get a few kills. Again, not worth a witch hunter. That's absolutely a bad trade for us. There's a battle in Xibalba here. Let's take a look at that. This is definitely relevant. This is Xibalba attacking out. They've been doing a much better job than I have. And this looks like another foul vapors trap. Just some mercenaries on top, along with the god, and like some thugs. Let's see, I think this guy has poison resistance built into the chassis, as well as a poison resistance gear piece, but still, I don't know. I don't think this is enough units. There's actually quite a bit of HP here in the thugs, so there's a good chance that they won't route, like they won't have an HP route. That said, I wonder if these guys have cold resistance. Okay, this guy does. I do think that, there's been, that guy has 20 cold resistance. This guy's undead, so he'll have a bunch. He has been horror marked. And this guy does not have cold resistance, although he has been twice born. So if he dies, that's not the end of the world. So I don't think that this foul vapors trap is going to work out. Then again, depending on what these guys are set to do, although I got to imagine that they're going to attack, it's pretty unlikely, this is going to turn timer. So this is looking very scary from Falegra, and this is our future, right? We have to figure out okay, how are we going to kill these guys? So we have a lot of great swords of sharpness. We have some soul slay. Hopefully we'll have some charm and such soon. So we'll have a variety of things, and then I think this is our last raid. And this one again, right? There's the scout hanging out. You are the cause of this, sir. Oh, we don't know. Maybe all of his friends are off in our land, or maybe he is the only scout that was ever produced from this province. So against really light PD, right? This is probably 6 thereabouts. This totally works. But the heavier commitment, we probably should have sent knight groups in against those forts. I think that would have been the correct play. Because the knights absolutely would have torn up. This works out for us. But the knights would have torn up those, regular units. And I am... the knights are very expensive, right? And this is okay. Abyssea is just retreating with one of their commanders. This is a raid from Man. No, it looks like they have the province defense, so he's just pinging it, I guess. I'm not really sure what went on here. But anyway, risking the knights right in raids kind of does feel bad, because that's one of our main striking elements of our army. But then again, the idea is that we're making a lot of knights, so we should have some to spare. And against those more heavily defended provinces, we obviously need something other than just the witch hunters. Maybe just the knights on bodyguard, right? Let the fire elementals do the majority of the work. Give a shield to the witch hunters. Have a bunch of knights surrounding them, 5 knights, and that's gonna be pretty tough to take out. So that might have been the play. This is a gnome, so it looks like there's a gnome throne. I think it's the throne of Earth. That's what I'm guessing. Where Falegra got this from, which would be kind of cool. Nature, we have nature and Earth now, but we certainly wouldn't mind having some more. And all the more reason. Although the throne that's nearest to us that we're likely to pick up, assuming everything works out, because this attack has been going so great. But assuming that it works out, the throne that's closest to us is not the throne of Earth. Falegra does have another throne, but it's pretty deep in there. I have to say, one fire elemental, if he gets a couple unlucky rolls, this is just militia. Flame eruption. You can see, right, the flagellants did take a little bit of damage from that, but we have fire resistance on the bless. I really do think that the flagellants are actually going to help us out a decent amount in the late game. Okay, there's no morale failure. That's good. But just the lone fire elemental, against enough numbers, it can fail, right? This is just militia. In fact, this still might fail, right? Because now we're going to advance and cast spells. And we'll see. We're ethereal. Yep, flame eruption. Okay, that one works out for us. People say fire magic sucks, but I am content. So that works out for us. We don't get the gnome, but we weren't really trying to get the gnome. Maybe our assassin will have some work for him. So definitely a mixed bag to the opener in the war, right? I think we went roughly 50-50. Definitely not a great result considering that we chose all of those battles. But I am trying to commit less, right, and do lighter attacks to start with. This is not a light attack, so here we are with Bandar, and this war has left me with more questions than answers, really, right? So a bunch of Seekers of Truth, And I hope for their sake that there's truth in crossbow bolts, because that's probably all that they're going to find. Still a lot of... No, not a lot of mages. More Seekers of Truth in the back line. There are some mages in the middle here, along with some of his sacreds. Let's take a look, because he's managed to get some blessings off. Yeah, so the god is still down, so like the blessing is, not really too relevant. And we sent like one knight group in immediately. The other knight group is hanging back and getting buffed. Flaming arrows now, like darkness, like yeah, I think that this is gonna be over. We also brought in the Great Eagles, because like sure, why not? I figured that there would probably only be like relatively undefended mages back there, which is a time that Great Eagles shine, and that we wouldn't want to let them sit back and do a bunch of Soul Slay or Mind Burn or whatever. So normally I don't love risking the Great Eagles, and I do think we took a few losses. Yeah, we lost 2 Great Eagles. Ooh, we also lose 45 crossbowmen. And 12 halberdiers, that's fine. And the crossbowmen I've talked about, we need to kind of move away from them. So since we lost a bunch of crossbowmen, that's not too bad. I do kind of want to check, like, how did we lose so many crossbowmen? I mean, I guess it must have been the wall archers. Like, yeah, they do get decent wall archers. 3 different types is kind of interesting. And some of these guys are the longbowmen, who are pretty dangerous. But still, like, we managed to get arrow fend up, right? So, like, yeah, we have air shield. Oh, you know what? Yeah, a lot of these guys are dying from disease from our time in the wells of pestilence. And the lack of supplies here and there. So probably, yeah, in fact, you know what? We can even see it. Like, look at all these red bars, right? A lot of these crossbowmen are kind of already on death's door. Also, it looks like there's some poison casting. Did I miss a foul vapors? I sure did. Okay, so we got hit with foul vapors. We did bring a counter to this, kind of, right? So we got poison ward down here, or rather, we will get poison ward down. Yeah, there we go. He cast it somewhere. And of course, we have poison resistance on the bless, so it's just our mundane troops that are going to suffer from this. And I was a little concerned, right? Like, that's why we brought the poison, part of why we brought the poison resistance stuff. I also kind of wanted to I'm sure Asphodel's watching. So I was just like, hey, I know about poison, although I'm not sure that this is really going to convince them, because we just have the lesser spell. But still, like, it works out for us, the first time I watched. Also, we blasted out a bunch of fire elementals, right? And they help clear the wall archers, a few guys on advance and cast spells. So I think it's a combination of, like, foul vapors play, and we certainly did not get poison resistance on everybody, and we kind of knew that the crossbowmen were going to get sacrificed. Like, yeah, a few of them got poison resistance on them. We do have a few retreats. So yeah, we are going to be researching Enchantment 7 for the battlefield-wide poison resistance, but just another reason that it's really important to finish out battles as quickly as possible. So yeah, a good last effort from Bandar Log. Like, we had not seen foul vapors, and yeah, that could have gone really badly for us, and so like a good switch on Bandar's part. And then yeah, speaking of fort storms, here's Asphodel storming. They are probably going to be the one. Yeah, there's not too much in here. Yeah, not enough chaff. I really think like these guys probably you'd be better served putting them on bodyguards for the mages. That said, Asphodel doesn't really get much if any flying, other than the bugs, of course. And like yeah, the bugs are going to be a serious problem now. Whereas if these mages had bodyguards, less of a problem. But none of that's really going to matter, right? So we got relief coming from Asphodel, so this is a fatigue play because he's also got Rigor Mortis up. Not that the fatigue play is really necessary, but he's giving respect to his opponent and hitting him with everything, making sure that it's going to be an easy battle because mages in forts can be really, really dangerous. He's also got Foul Vapors up, of course. I think that's pretty much, you can just assume every major battle that Asphodel fights, they're going to have that. Puppet Mastery, I'm not familiar with that. That must be a national only spell of Asphodel. I'll have to look that up afterwards because I definitely don't know what that does. That said, these guys are somewhat blocking the gate, right, which kind of helps, but yeah, he just doesn't have enough stuff here. But Fascia's, right, he's getting attacked by 2 powers. Asphodel's probably the game leader, so, there's only so much you can do. So Fascia loses another fort. I don't think they're long for this world. Asphodel doesn't really lose anything that they care about, so, yeah, doing maybe even a better job than I did in our assault. Not that our assault on Bandar was bad. Speaking of Bandar, we burned down a fairy court, fantastic. And then we buy some gems, that is very nice. There's a worldwide event. Okay, luck and growth, we like that. We have full growth, so that's not as important. And then we discover a sneaking Yusian unit. I wonder if this is a scout or is this an elf? It's just a scout. but still, Yus is doing quite a bit of scouting. This is on top of one of our forts, right? Because we can see all the wolves. So, have we been spending a lot of nature gems on these wolves? Maybe not a lot, but a good amount, a considerable amount. But they are paying some dividends at least, getting rid of some scouts. And I do think that's really important. And then, of course, our palisade finishes. This is where we're getting the Garnet Amazons from, and it's the reason that we're attacking this turn. And Bandar Log is finally permanently vanquished. It was a weird war, but still very interesting. Nicely done, Bandar, with some excellent thugs. No doubt we'll talk more about it at the finish of the game, and I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. I guess first things first, let's talk the war with Phlegra. You can see that our rating has already tapered off considerably. Didn't go fantastic. I do think I promised we'd look at the province graph. Yeah, so overall, it did, I guess since we didn't get attacked, obviously our provinces went up, since at least some of our raids were successful. But you can see from the, battle icons, right? It's we had a battle here and here and here. None of which are under our control, right? So we had 3 failed battles and we had 3 successful battles, so it was actually exactly 50%. So not a great start to the war, but not the worst start to a war. And I mean, yeah, the battles that we lost, not a big deal. That's why we committed lighter stuff. Now, unfortunately, right, we are going to give away our army in both cases, since our raids on top of the forts were in the failed category. So in the future, probably would be better to have heavier raiding that is more likely to succeed in the path of your army, since I think that's probably the most important rating, right? So instead of sending these guys all the way over, it's we should have used some of the knight groups to attack the fort provinces. But, it is what it is. I have faith in our armies, hopefully, fingers crossed. So, still feeling decent about this war, although, Phlegra is pretty large. Perhaps a bit bigger than I gave them credit for. I mean, I know we've sent a scout through here before, so it's it really shouldn't be a surprise. But, yeah, there's a lot of things to track. Oftentimes, if you don't have a scout in the area, it's very easy to forget. Not to mention that, this may have changed since the last time we went through here. So we're still trying to figure out exactly where Phlegra's eastern border is, which could become quite relevant, because Ulm actually reached out and asked if I'd attacked Phlegra. And I not really sure, haven't really talked with the Ulm player yet, so I was a little hesitant to just give out information for free. But, after a little discussion, they were saying they were worried about bumps, because they also attacked Phlegra, but I'm not sure, maybe their scouting network is significantly worse than ours. I did vaguely know that they probably share a border, right? Because Ulm is somewhere down and around here. We can see them over here, we can see their eastern border, but if I'm recalling correctly, I think their border with Phlegra is somewhere around here. So I mean, unless they're just doing the mother of all alpha strike, there's absolutely no risk of our bump for a long time. So that's pretty much what I told them, is I have a lot of scouts out there, so if I see some of your armies, I'll let you know. I guess it is possible that they've made, a ton of inroads along the coast here and are getting decently close. But, we have scouts in position, probably should be moving this guy forward. To a certain extent, we don't really care so much what's happening over here. It's more important that we catch, Phlegran reinforcement groups moving through, so that, we know what we're going to be up against. So anyway, that is good news. It was an unplanned 2v1, and I also don't really know, how heavily Ulm has committed to this war. But yeah, I think we can handle Phlegra on our own, but we also weren't really planning on conquering all of Phlegra. I was figuring that I was planning on reaching out to Shiniyama eventually, which this is not a great war for them because they don't have a great border with Phlegra, but they are pretty close. Yeah, here's Phlegra's capital, right? So that's not too far for them to go to pick up a capital, and it'll also help lock off this throne, which granted it's a bit of a nasty one in terms of defenders, but they will want to take it. And then also I was figuring, Asphodel probably has an excellent scouting network. We've talked before with the Harpies and everything, and they share a fairly substantial border with Phlegra. So I was figuring that's well, if we start to have a good amount of success, and grab, the chunk of Phlegra that we're interested in, it's probably going to trigger Asphodel to come in as well. But if that goes to Ulm instead, that is
absolutely a good thing. So yeah, not too much to report. Like, we'll see how this war works out. But otherwise, like, we're gonna violate our NAP. I like to think of it as sort of a gray area violation, but definitely did sign a non-aggression pact with Abyssia. Now, of course, Abyssia has subbed out, right? And there's a new player. It is our host, who is also playing as Asphodel. And yeah, I've touched on this a little bit in terms of playing multiple nations. It's a bit of a gray area, and it's very difficult to get enough subs, especially for a game of this size. But like, yeah, after seeing like Man get defeated here, and again, like Man is still doing just fine, right? Like overall, like they have a rating group here, which we might actually bump with definitely if we run into all these Wardens of Avalon. Just like our little crossbowman group here will absolutely die, but that's okay. And I'll probably reach out to Man after this turn and just let them know that like probably just these two provinces is all I'm really interested in. Really just this province for the Lizard Shamans. Now, I mean, would we like Abyssia's capital? Of course. But, I mean, like that would mean war with Man. And that's probably not worth it because I am a little bit concerned, right? Like this player is also getting some free scouting information. That's just the nature of if you're playing, two different nations. They're obviously very intimately aware of the loss that Man just took, and they share a fairly substantial border with Man, and a lot of Man's forces are deployed, away from this border. Now, whether or not they have other armies here, I don't know. Hopefully they have some sort of defensive force, but it's not impossible, right, that Asphodel chooses to jump in against Man, and I'm actually kind of thinking that it's like, okay, well, like Man and maybe Ulm are who I should be talking to really as like a counterbalance to Asphodel, because I think between the three of us we'll be in a decent position. But yeah, we'll see. Definitely, it's possible that this this is not a, trying to vulture some territory is not a great way to make a new ally. But we do really need like extra nature magic, like another Lizard Shaman province would be, pretty critical. And as far as vulturing goes, like 2 provinces is pretty minor. The other thing too is that I would be willing to fight this army for Man essentially. It will be nasty, but I do think we can beat it, and I do think there's a decent amount of chance. I think Man wins this war in the long run, but like how long and how bloody it's going to be is up in the air. And like right now it's not looking so great. So, while Man probably isn't going to be thrilled that we're doing some vulturing, it's pretty standard. So I think if I reach out and let him know like, hey, saw you were having a little trouble, like really want this Lizard Shaman province. Man also has a ton of nature magic. They don't have so much astral magic. So, the Lizard Shamans definitely do have some value for them. But hopefully they, have astral covered from something else. They have enough territory. They probably have astral covered from something else. But, I let them know that's like, hey, I just need these 2 provinces, and like I'm happy to help in the fight against Abyssia, and like, hey, we should probably, sign a non-aggression pact and team up against Asphodel. So we'll see how that goes. Haven't actually reached out yet. And then, of course, like, yeah, I am violating the NAP that I signed with Abyssia. But, this player, the sub, like, they didn't reach out to me in terms of, like, hey, what was, like, the previous Diplo that you had with this nation. Obviously, like, I could have reached out and let them know that, like, hey, we had a non-aggression pact. It's also possible that, he just got the information from the player and, it just assumes that I'm going to respect it. And I think in a normal situation, I've definitely reached out to subs before and maintained previous Diplo. That is a bit of a gray area in and of itself. Like sometimes subs feel that it's like, well, I'm a new player, so diplomacy kind of resets. Whereas like other subs will maintain pre-existing agreements. I tend to maintain pre-existing agreements because it's a bit frustrating, when you have agreements in place and then you make some moves based on those agreements and then the player switches and now all of a sudden like all bets are off. But on the flip side, I can understand as a sub coming in, it's like, well, I didn't make any of these agreements, so, it's kind of a fresh slate for me. So like I said, definitely a gray area, but the fact that this is also Asphodel, it's kind of like, well, this player is good enough. I'm willing to be cutthroat, and breaking non-aggression pacts is definitely a cutthroat move. Now, we may pay for this. I did say that I have high confidence we can beat this army. Not such high confidence we can beat the horror trap that we just saw get sprung on man. So like we'll see how that goes. Because most of our magic in this area is fire magic. I mean, we do have our earth magic, so we can always drop rocks, but against just a couple of horrors, like that's we'll probably eventually kill like that Gore-Tide horror that caused man so many woes. But we would kill a lot of our own units in doing so. We've seen how dropping the rocks is a bit of a mixed bag. So what we're sending in is just kind of what we had in the fort. This should be enough to overwhelm any province defense, just like a little bit of strength of giants, legions of steel. We're also going to be dropping down some fire resistance because we're going up against Abyssia, so that's going to be pretty essential. Luckily our sacreds of course will get to use the fire resistance on the blessed, and like this is what we're going to be backing it up with. So we're actually probably going to do like a fairly substantial not an augur communion, sorry, a little bit of 6e coming through, a witch hunter communion with a grand master, actually probably a couple grand masters leading it. And like I don't think Abyssia's research is high enough, right, where they're just going to be able to wipe out the dudes in robes communion play. So I do think this is going to be a moment where like the Marignon's communion is going to get to shine, because we have some spells definitely that these guys can cast, and we're bringing enough mages, we should be able to communion them up and get some pretty good, battlefield wide buffs. And we have enough knights here, and we are overall a little bit light. We were sort of planning on this, but we were still doing some recruitment. But anyway, hopefully the army-wide buffs will be enough to carry the day, because our damage-dealing magic is mostly fire magic, which of course is not going to be useful against Abyssia. So we'll see how that goes. We are of course still doing a lot of troop recruitment down here, and then let's see, we're also doing troop recruitment out of Mictlan. Just more knights. We probably will need reinforcements up here. No doubt Phlegra is going to send a lot of stuff down, and like I said, they're relatively large, so like this war is going to take us a second. And then of course there's the Yis situation. So that army that we scryed on last turn, they jumped on top of a fort. Actually, this might be a different army, because I don't recall so many different unit types, but maybe they joined with something. Regardless, they're sitting on top of a fort that's on top of a throne, and it's cracked. So, hopefully Pelagia has some sort of defense here. We're going to scry again, and see the result of the battle. And, we don't really know, we can't really see the rest of the war. We are getting our underwater scout over there, and we are bringing in one more underwater scout that we'll send over. So hopefully that'll give us a better picture. And, I've talked about how, we've talked about this situation. So the only update to this whole conflict is we're going to make a horror harmonica golem. So we have construction 8. The horror harmonica is a, classic artifact, probably one of the better artifacts. It's a bit on the expensive side, but, it'll hopefully be worth it. And the classic thing is to slap it on top of a golem. It casts Wailing Winds, the item does at the start of the start of the battle, and then it also, just summons in horrors. So it kind of works like that horror bomb that we just saw Abyssia do, but it's just sort of, tied up in one item. And then usually what you do, you slap it on the golem, because the golem is mindless, and horrors, they don't care about mindless units, right? They like inflicting pain and suffering. If you're mindless, it's just no fun. And then, you put on a bunch of defensive gear to make it really difficult to hit or damage the golem. And then you also put a ring of returning on the golem, so that when you finally do break through, the golem just gets sent back home. And then guess what? He can teleport out again the next turn. So we'll see. I haven't actually ever done a horror harmonica golem. So, maybe I'll mess something up with the kit. But from what I've heard, they can be pretty annoying to deal with. And I do not think that Yis is really currently set up to deal with them. And golems they're poor amphibians, but they can go underwater, and since we don't really need him to do any fighting, he just needs to stand there. I should probably look into, I'm assuming Wailing Winds works underwater, and I'm also assuming that you can summon horrors underwater, but I don't actually know either of those things for a fact. So I do think the horror harmonica, we're gonna do the horror harmonica golem anyway, for laughs and for fun. But there's an outside chance he won't be useful immediately in the way I was expecting him to. But assuming that those spells do work underwater, we'll talk to Pelagia, right? And basically he can just feed us province numbers, right, about where to send the Golem, and we'll just drop him, on top of Yissian armies, and we'll actually hopefully be able to provide a lot more support to Pelagia than I was expecting. And assuming Pelagia is putting up like some kind of a defense and we get decent results with our Horror Harmonica Golem, once we drop the Horror Harmonica Golem in, we should just attack Yis's land holdings, because there's no way that they're just going to sit back and not attack us while we're just dropping this Golem on top of their stuff. We're not forging any of the rest of his kit this turn, so we're at least going to need like one more turn, and I haven't reached out to Pelagia just yet, so this is probably like 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4 turns off, because, we do I don't necessarily want to commit, because he's only going to be able to destroy 1 force a turn, like at most. So if the war is going really badly for Pelagia, the Golem won't be able to turn that around. But anyway, so that's what we're going to do on the Yissian front. And we're just digging in a bit in Bandar. I think we're building... No, actually, I don't think we're building any infrastructure over here currently. But we will be. This army, right, is just going to hang out here, and then, Yis's land holdings is what it will go after. The other thing, too, of course, is that, Asphodel is probably not too far in our future. We'll see. They have a little bit of cleanup left to do, but after that, they're kind of a free agent. Whether they choose to go for us or someone else, time will tell, but we may actually pull the trigger before them. Probably not. I think the Phlegra thing, the Abyssian thing, the Yiss thing, we got a lot of pokers in the fire, or about to go in the fire. But it is a thought, definitely. We have a decent garrison here in Arcocephaly. We'll have to build up a garrison in Bandar as well. Otherwise, I think this is mostly just site searchers and such moving around. Our research is the same, right? Hasn't really changed. We are sending out our Thug, so she's got some poison resistance now. Hopefully, it'll be an easy win and not an embarrassing loss of gems. And I think that more or less covers turn 55.